Where you at? Where you at? Well, I'm looking at the ceiling. Where you at? Where you at? Fix your camera. And just give us a few seconds here, folks. Apologize for being late. I was actually on the phone with my daughter and my new grandson in Arizona. Got to give a shout out to my daughter and the new bouncing baby boy addition added to our family. Um, uh, Kai is his name, and he's this little fat little dumpling. Um, but yeah, it looks like a dumpling. It looks like a little
Really?
dumpling that you drop in, a little fat, pudgy
Wow.
dumpling. But
Wow.
but good evening, everyone. Give me a second. We're waiting for one other co-host to
She's
come
no,
on.
she's still at Granny's house helping her.
Okay, so she's not coming on at all.
No, she's not gonna make it home in time in Carroll County.
Oh, well, she could have did it from Granny's house, but
No service.
no service. Oh, no. Well, good evening, folks. Welcome to another edition, another rendition of Frontline News, where we bring you news and conversation from the front lines of urban America and beyond. And so much is going on around the city and around the country and around the world. Yolanda, I don't know. Uh, there was almost a similar January 6th event that took place in Russia. I
Wow.
don't know if you know that Russia was almost involved in an insurrection. So there's so much going on around the world and around the city. And, we're going to get into the conversations. But before we move forward, of course, I have my lovely hostess on this afternoon with me, as always. Um, just all around woman of the people. I watch her tirelessly work with the community at all hours of the day and night. Um, and I truly appreciate everything that she does for the community. Um, we're claiming it in Jesus' name today. Family, the next mayor of Baltimore City, because she is getting ready to announce that she is going to be a candidate for mayor for Baltimore City, and she's building an amazing platform of accountability and responsibility in this city like you have never seen before. And there are conversations that she's going to have on her platform that no other mayoral candidate is having these conversations. So I'm truly proud to be in this Queen's camp. And without further ado, family, please just give it up and give a warm welcome to Yolanda Pulley, our next mayor of Baltimore City.
Yeah, so thank you.
We'll
I
do like the
greatly
Ron.
appreciate
Do like
you.
gotta get the sound effects going. But we'll go
I
ahead.
greatly appreciate, all that y'all say about me, but unfortunately, we're doing the work that's supposed to have been already done, and the sad reality is that uncomfortable conversations and uncomfortable truths have to be told. And basically what we're doing, I'm sitting up here looking at the news now, which is quite ridiculous, of $13 million being allocated from the author funds to these nonprofit organizations. But it was two that stood out to me. One that got over $7 million, and the other one got over $5 million. And that was one of them was the what is it, the GV, whatever that gun violence thing is.
The gun trace task force.
Yeah, so they got
The GPTF.
$17 million.
Mhm.
17 or something $million, and then the other one was Catholic Charities.
And when you say they
Received
got money, was that money to pay the settlements? Was that money going towards the settlements?
settlement of what?
So you saying that part of the art money went to the gun trace task force?
No. The gun violence thing that's in City Hall.
Oh, you talking about the gun violence reduction strategy?
Yeah, that. Yeah,
right,
that.
right, right. I thought you
And
was talking about the gun trace task force, but you're talking about the gun reduction strategy. Okay,
right. So wait a
my
minute, let me
fault,
see if
Pamela.
I can. I want to pull it back up. But yeah, like I said, we have to start having the uncomfortable truth. And right now, you know, we're being lied to. We're being lied to. We're being and the thing is that they're following the blueprint. And that's the thing that makes me mad about our voting population is because they act like they don't know any better.
Hmm.
And they do know better. They know better because they've been done this for decades. You know, we're still fighting the same fights and the same battles that we are fighting from the 60s and the 70s. Why?
Hmm.
Because they follow the same blueprint. And we have to start having these uncomfortable conversations about the same blueprint that's being followed because at the end of the day, the only one that's suffering is you. The
Right,
only ones that's suffering is us.
right, right. I'm waiting for you to try to see if you can find that article.
It's not an article, it's the stuff that I get from, oh, here you go. It says, release Monsi announcement, 6 rounds of ARPA allocations. It say the award totaling 13.4 million directly aligned with the Scott's administration charged to co-produce public safety. So some organization, the National Alliance of Mental Health and Mental Illness, NAMI, they got 50,000 single year. Greenmount West Foundation Restorative Community Space, $25,000. Intersection of Change, Martha's Place, 50,000 single year. HAVAS Trade and Skill Project, and it say the project to teach, equip youth with computer programming along with web and game development to prepare them for demand in the career sector, $50,000. Bond Secure Community Works to support returning citizens violence and reduction program as part of Baltimore Community Violence Intervention Ecosystem, $500,000. Living classrooms, $500,000. Youth advocate programs, and it just say youth advocate programs. Multi-year, 2023-2024. This is your GVRS service provision includes coaching, life coaching, emergency relocation, and participant stipend for
And that's
individuals
what you
24 years of age and above over a 2-year period.
and that's when you was talking about the GV the gun violence reduction strategy, the GVRS.
Right.
That's what you were
So
talking about.
right. So they've received $7,287,682. Then you have Catholic Charities of Baltimore. Funds will go towards the management of 2 Safe Streets sites over a 3-year period. That was $5,100,000. So funds go towards the management of 2 Safe Street sites. What does that mean? I mean, I'm a tad bit confused,
Well,
but
Ken, again, so we kind of talked about this off air, how the whole Safe Streets organization functions. So each one, although they are Safe Street, uh, and we look at them as Safe Street Baltimore, technically each one is a separate entity. Each one is registered as a separate nonprofit status. So there's a Safe Streets Park Heights that's registered. There's a Safe Streets Cherry Hill that's registered.
why
That
would that even
also,
be a legal thing? That just sounds like more money to just pour into this program. That should have been under one organization. It has the same name, is in the same city. Why would it be different allocations of money and different oversights? That doesn't even make sense.
so I see the reasoning and the rationale behind it is, again, instead of having one particular large centralized oversight, you have individual sites, and each individual site each individual site, each
But it still
individual
should be
site is
collective under
working.
one.
Right.
Yeah, but they're all receiving different amounts of funding.
Correct. And so
And then
again, so the
oversight. So who's
right,
overseeing the other ones that's receiving
right.
millions of dollars? That's a waste of
Well, if you let
taxpayers'
me
money.
explain, if you will,
No, because
again,
you great make excuses for this
it's
mess.
not excuses. I'm just telling you how the formula is. So the thing is that each Safe Streets is a separate entity serving that particular community. It allows them, in many cases, for each one of those Safe Streets to go after funding it on their own individually, or even in some cases to have their own fundraisers individually. And they have had events in Park Heights to help the Park Heights Safe Streets. Now, if you were doing fundraising and everything was under one umbrella, well, then you'd have to take that money and put it into one pot. And then that one pot would be shared by all the Safe Streets, which in some cases may not necessarily be fair in reference to outreach. What's more fair of a formula is that each one is a separate entity serving that particular individual community that has the ability to go after funding for that Safe Street location, do fundraising for that Safe Streets location. And the reason why you really need the managers like Life Bridge, Catholic Charities, Build, is because technically the structure of the organization of each Safe Streets, you have to remember now, the majority of the folks that are involved in each one of these locations or each one of these Safe Street sites are going to be folks that are former ex-offenders,
Oh,
folks that are
Jason,
coming
stop it.
home,
Okay,
former
no,
hold
no,
on,
no.
former gang members. And the
Jason,
thing
it's
is
only
that
one gang. It's only one gang that's associated with Safe Streets. It's only one.
no, so again, some of them knowing that again that they are former gang members, they are former folks that have been incarcerated, they are supposed to be street folks that have the ability to do violence interruption because they are connected, they know the streets, they have the history, they
Right,
have the
right,
connection, right? So
right.
the theory is again is that each one of them operates as a separate entity, but because technically these are new nonprofits that are being established in each one of these communities. We have to understand that they're inexperienced.
Oh,
Um,
Jason,
and
please.
because they are inexperienced, folks are not expecting them to be the managers of their own money. Although they may
Okay,
be,
overstood. But Jason, like
right,
I said, you just poured $50 million into Safe Streets. You poured an
right,
additional $5 million into Safe Streets.
right,
So that's $55 million
right.
that has to be allocated out of the author money. But how are they going to sustain after it's gone? And then another thing
Well,
is,
again, they are a nonprofit, and some of the things that was supposed to be being done in reference to the physical sponsor, the actual sponsor, whether it's Life Bridge, whether it's Safe Streets, whether it's Living Classroom, whether it's Catholic Charities, they have the ability to help these nonprofits,
yeah,
these
but right
separate
now you don't
nonprofit
hear them, but you don't
organizations.
hear them talking about other funding that they receive. This is
So,
city funding
so,
only.
but right, but we're talking about right, but they have each individual site has the ability to raise their own money and to go after grants on their own. And the organizations that are the physical managers, the ones that are handling the administrative part of the nonprofit, because that's what they're really handling. They're handling the money, they're handling the paperwork, they're handling
And
putting
they have no
together the
business. A certain parts,
bylaws.
yeah, but it's certain parts that has no business inside of, and that's what I'm talking about when we still trying to forge certain things together. Life Bridge and all the and Catholic charities don't have anything to do with crime reduction.
No, but what they do have is they have
We're giving Safe Streets
experience.
too much time and too much
So
energy,
so
and I'm
so
starting to get
so
upset.
no, actually, let's keep this conversation going
I don't
because
want
it
to. I don't
right,
want to.
right, right. Well, again, let's keep this conversation going for a reason, because it's obvious that there needs to be some clarity in understanding the madness of their formula. LifeBridge, Catholic Charities, all of these organizations are nonprofits, and all of them have years of experience in managing nonprofits. The administrative stuff that goes on, they have experience with it. So their whole theory is that they are the managers. They are the ones that handle the money. They're the ones that help with writing of the grants and putting together the proposals and things of that
Again, a waste of
nature.
time.
Right.
Just like Sheila Dixon said.
Right. It's not. I see where the formula could work. The problem is,
Jason,
right. You want
Sheila
to be
Dixon.
combative today,
Yeah, I'm be very combative.
and I'm willing to have this debate with you because,
Well, Sheila Dixon called
right.
it correctly. They have no business inside of these organizations, one, and I feel the same way. Another thing that we
Right.
also can agree on.
So I just explained to you why they
Can I
are
finish
there.
my statement? Can I
They
finish
are
my
there
statement? I
because
don't care why they're there.
And it's just like no difference between, like, people have come to us and have said, hey, there's a grant available out there, but technically, because you guys are a new nonprofit,
We're
technically
not
you
new.
really need, they're not going to give you $500,000 in
I'm sorry, I'm
funding.
eating a banana.
Right. They're not going to give you $500,000 in funding because, one, you are kind of new, but they will give you the money if you have a manager, if you have a physical sponsor that could sponsor you, that does have the experience.
I don't care about none of that. Like I said, Jason, all of that stuff is
I
hogwash.
do in the simple sense that most of these folks that are involved in Safe Streets have no experience in running nonprofits. None.
And they shouldn't be one then.
Well, that's the case, then we shouldn't be one. We're new.
No, we're not new. This has been People Empowered by the Struggle been in existence since 2008.
The work may have been, but the nonprofit status.
You want me to hang up on you?
Look, Safe Streets has been around in other cities for years.
You want to let me finish this? Right. I also agree with Sheila Dixon when she caught them up at the park giving out dish detergent and washing powder. That's not your job. That's not your lane. You're supposed to be out here doing what you're supposed to say you're going to do as far as crime reduction. You giving out dish detergent and washing powder pods is not going to stop crime.
Here's the thing. For them, and I'm just going to play devil's advocate, for them, that may have been justified for them. How do you win over a community? How do you win over a community that may not be so willing to work with mediators? How do you win over a community that may not be receptive to the thought process of crime reduction, violence reduction, or having someone come and mediate for violence? How do you connect that bridge? How do you do things that allows you to kind of connect with the community? Well, you do things as far as outreach to the community. You do food giveaways. You maybe have a barbecue and feed the community.
Right. We wait.
And in the process of having,
we wait till somebody gets shot to throw a cookout. Stop it.
But again, the whole process is about trying to bring people into the conversation. And the food is just an icebreaker. The laundry detergent is just an icebreaker. These things are just a way of getting the community to come out, and then you have a conversation. Hey, if you need mediation, give us a call. Every time someone picks up a laundry detergent, you have that conversation. Hey, don't forget, this was brought to you, provided by Safe Streets, and don't forget what we do as far as a task to the community is concerned.
Yeah, we like little children, so we go into schools and we sit up there and harass little children and watch y'all bully and fight on people. We just stand there and watch and have conversations about it the next day. Or, hey, this grown man from Safe Streets is actually inappropriately texting my child. Stop it.
So again, these are some other issues that are other issues that technically, really and truly, has to be dealt with and addressed with by the manager. So each Safe Streets facility, from what we understand, has a manager. And if the manager is not holding folks to a standard, if the manager is not allowing certain accountability, to be presented to the community.
It does not work, and you know it.
Well, again,
It's
that's
no
a whole
data
nother
proven. It's
that's a
no
whole
data.
nother conversation. But here's the
It's no
thing.
data proven that this whatever they're doing is working. Sorry.
But here's the thing. That's what you're saying, and I'm saying to
No, that's
you.
what really, Jason.
Hold
Where
on,
the
hold
data?
on,
No,
hold on. I told you I'm going to
how
play
many times do they
devil's
have to call
advocate.
for the data, Jason?
I'm going to play devil's advocate today.
You always playing devil's advocate. What you're doing is playing
If
cover
any,
up.
hold on. If
Look, go
anybody,
put a Safe Street shirt on and be
right?
quiet.
Look, if anybody, again, knows what they are doing, it would be the mayor's office. It would be Monzi.
Right, and they're not sharing information because they're the ones
And they
getting
don't
paid
have
off
to.
of it.
They don't have to. You don't have to
Again,
share. You don't have
other
to
news.
share. Huh?
Did you just mute me?
No.
Yes, you did.
I did not. My hands are no even near the controls.
So
Stop
what
it.
was that?
Whatever happened on your end. We do have storms that are out there right now. We do have bad weather out there right now. I would say call your internet provider.
Really?
But that had nothing to do. My hands are nowhere even near the controls.
Okay,
We're having a lively debate without necessarily being violent to each other.
Okay, so we're gonna agree to disagree on this one, and we're gonna move on. Yeah, they are a national model, but where is it working at? Because it's not working in Baltimore City.
You're saying it's not working. So again, right. You're saying it's not working.
Right, it's not working, Jason.
Right. But again, the one who has the data.
It says Safe Streets is focused on targeting at youth risk. Risk youth. Okay, overstood, but I need them to do their job. Because we get phone calls about after the fact that it didn't happen. So where was the preventative measures at? What health approach are they using?
And to Mr. Michael
Hello,
Randolph.
Mr. Michael Randolph.
Yep. If you like, so I'm sharing actually right now, where if you'd like, you are more than welcome to join the conversation and actually join in if you have the ability to pull up the StreamYard link on your phone. I just shared it on all the platforms. And anyone that also sees the link, they could come in and have a conversation with us in reference to this. But
I'm not a fan. I will never be a fan of Safe Streets.
So again, I'm not necessarily a fan.
Wait a minute, he said something very important. He said Safe Streets is recognized by the Development of Justice. It is.
Right. I think he's saying the Department of Justice.
I mean, the Department of Justice. Right. So he said that it's evidence based.
Correct.
Where is the evidence? Where's the
But that's what I'm trying to tell you, that there are things that go on with Safe Streets that unfortunately are not going to be brought to center. Why? Because you are dealing with violence reduction, you are dealing with mediation, you are dealing with multiple parties involved in reducing that violence.
But if you can tout these numbers on your website, and you said that you have over such and such, then you should be able to show how that's being done. You should be able to come back and say, you should be able to come back and show the data where this is actually working at.
So you can show certain things
all day, every day.
You can show.
We never see Safe Streets.
You can show certain things, but there's certain things that are going to be behind doors that you're not going to see. Prime example, and we'll watch this documentary because there's a documentary I really want you to watch. It's called The Violence Paradox. And it talks about, remember we talked about the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala and the relations to it, and how we were a violent society back in primitive ages. We're actually not as violent as we used to be because of the development. No, serious. And that we need to watch the documentary so I can.
Jason, we're not getting into this again. This is not a debate that we're going to have on here. We're not going to. No, you're
hear me out.
You're sitting up here again, trying to make excuses for piss poor behavior.
I'm not making excuses.
That you're not in a video game, Mr. Rodriguez.
Right.
You know this. No, you're going to hear me out. You know that you're not in a video game. When you pull out a gun, you know you don't have 3 to 4 lives left. So please stop.
We understand that. So we're not talking about that. What we're talking about, again, is that under the violence paradox, they did research in reference to violence, whether we were violent in primitive ages or
Right, but
are
who
we
did the
more
research,
violent
Jason?
now in this society?
Who did
And
the
they actually
research?
found out that we are not as violent as we were when we were in our primitive times. There's actually more evidence that shows that we were more violent when we were primitive, and it makes sense because we really didn't have a development of our prefrontal cortex. So we relied more on our amygdala, that fight or flight, that fear or fight mechanism inside of us. We relied more on that. And
Jason, you know that
listen,
the conversation goes two ways. You also can say that during slavery, when we was doing this stuff, and they considered us to be the angry, the this, that, and the third, and you also can argue the fact that they have always looked at us as being the violent bunch, and all this stems from one place. You always put us in survival mode. People
right,
cannot thrive if they're
right.
trying to
So I'm
survive.
not just talking about us and enslaved. I'm talking about society in general,
I'm talking about
globally.
society now.
No, I'm talking about right, and I'm trying to tell you that the evidence shows that we are less violent of a people than we were back in the dark ages, back in the primitive time. We were actually more violent as a society than we are now. And in that documentary, they show different strategies that have come along throughout the years in reference to reducing violence, whether people hold demonstrations against the war during Vietnam, whether people stand out in Tiananmen Square in China and get rolled over by tanks in protesting of a military state in China. We have done more now to reduce violence ever globally than we ever have in the past. And what they did feature in this documentary was they actually featured the Safe Streets Park Heights location in this documentary. And in the documentary, they actually go through a mediation. They actually show you in this documentary what Safe Streets actually does. And I wish in some cases that there would be more of this presentation to the community so that the community can understand exactly what it is that Safe Streets is supposed to be doing. And in the documentary, they show an incident where a guy's cousin had just been killed by a rival gang up in Park Heights. And the Safe Streets mediators brought the two warring sides together because the one side, who their cousin was just killed, was, threatening to kill the cousin on the opposing gang side, was getting ready to kill family members on the other side. And the mediator came in and they blacked people's faces out. They kept things dark so you couldn't see people's faces. And that's the risk that you take by exposing the data to this, by showing the mediations, by putting things down and allowing the public to see this.
Jason,
you
we're not
you may
asking for
be
their
opening
personal
up a whole
information.
nother bag of worms in
We're not
reference to
asking for
this.
their personal information. That's not what
But
we're
but but
asking.
again, that may be exposed in the process.
It's not going to be exposed.
But again, so what they did was in this documentary was they showed an actual mediation. And the mediation was going back and they were arguing and they were fussing and and they were ready to go at each other's throat. And at the end of the day, when things were settled, the mediator from Safe Street said, yo, you're not going to touch nobody on his side. He's not going to touch nobody on your side. We're going to squash this and move forward from here and leave this be. Now, how much of this is actually going to take place? Because I don't know. Nobody's never followed up with these two people, and we don't know who these two people are that were warring and feuding against each other. We don't know who they are. So there's no way to really go back and say, hey, did he go back 2 months later and kill this guy's cousin two weeks later, or 2 months later in retaliation? We don't know if that necessarily happened. Somebody may have still got at these folks they were trying to get at, and the mediation may not have worked. But this is the type of engagement that Safe Streets goes through every day, to where they go to the warring factors. They go warring factions. They go to the warring factions and they try to get them to negotiate and have a ceasefire and agree to not kill each other. That's something that does require a special skill. It's something that the police can't necessarily do. It's something that most community organizers can't do. And the reason why the program has worked in Chicago and in New York was because they incorporated the streets, because they incorporated those folks that were in that lifestyle, that knew the streets, that in some cases know the shooters, know the killers, know the ones that have been killed, know that whole situation. So they're able to navigate better as mediators, as violent interrupters. They are able to kind of navigate better because of it. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be successful every time, because you're dealing with emotions, you're dealing with people's feelings, you're dealing, with the principality of a lot of this. So, and for someone to come to me and say, I know in my situation, I'm just going to say my situation, somebody kills somebody in my family, it's going to be hard for somebody to come to just talk to me and just tell me to ceasefire and lig it and let it go and move on. Nah, I might still go see somebody later on, even after that conversation. But I feel good enough to know that there are conversations like that are being had, that we are talking to the shooters, that we are talking to the victims, and that we are trying to get something kind of negotiated and ironed out within our community. Is it necessarily always going to work? Hell no. I already know, because somebody like me, Safe Streets couldn't come and mediate to me, because I'm still going to see about my family. And many people have that mindset like that. But I appreciate the fact of what they're supposed to be doing. Now, how do we hold them accountable is a whole nother set of circumstances. I don't know how you hold an organization like this accountable when you're dealing with the streets. And you could easily be jeopardizing someone's life or putting someone at risk by giving out too much data or giving out too much information. And if you have somebody that's put in charge of a gun violence reduction strategy, shouldn't they be the ones in charge of doing their job and their task? Just like we have some issues with Commissioner Harrison kind of having his hands tied. We even say to the point where Commissioner Harrison, his balls were mutilated. He had no balls because the mayor had his balls, basically in his pocket. And every time we would talk to the commissioner would tell us, well, I got a boss and I got to answer to him. But that's not how it should really be. If you put somebody in charge of a department, yeah, you might have an owner of the company, but you're hoping that your managers go out there and you give them the ability to do the job, and you'll give them the tools that they need to do the job. We've never really give Harrison the ability to be a commissioner. We've never given them that ability to do that. Why? Because you got Monzi interfering, which they don't have any police history. They don't know about law enforcement. You got the mayor who is telling the commissioner what to do. The mayor knows nothing about policing and hasn't gone to school for
Well, you
policing.
know what I said? I said that, you need to take politics outside of the police department and let them do their job. You need to untie their hands. Violence is related to right generation. Exactly, it definitely is, and that's what the part that we need to be tackling right there.
And Michael Randolph had the opportunity. He did see the documentary in reference to the violence paradox, and I'm glad that you had an opportunity to check it out. I'm gonna definitely sit down, my sister. We'll sit down and we'll watch it together. I'm telling you, it really opens up your eyes as to what even what mediation or what violence interrupting is even about. It's a risk.
Well, Jason,
It's
we've been
it's it's
interrupting
it's a
violence in
crapshoot.
our neighborhoods every time we go out there and jump in somebody else's mess to sit up there and try to deter whatever is getting ready to go on.
Of
So I know
course.
about violence reduction and all that kind of stuff. So she's coming out of Chicago. Yeah, absolutely. But
Hmm.
everything that works somewhere else is not going to work here. And that's what we have to understand when it comes down to violence, basically in Baltimore.
I think that some of these strategies will work, and I reason why I'm a little bit on the other side of the fence is because technically, when you look at the history of Chicago safe streets, It's modeled totally different. One of the biggest complaints that we have about safe streets here in Baltimore is that we don't see them as responsive in the emergency rooms as we do with the Chicago model. The Chicago model, somebody's been shot, immediately Safe Streets goes to the hospital. They're immediately talking to the victim. They're immediately trying to get into the mindset, into the mind of that individual to try to get that person to not want to retaliate, to try to let the issue go. And even in some cases, get information that even the police can't get. Because a lot of times you're not going to share as a victim who your victimizer was. But with Safe Streets in Chicago, not talking about what's going on here, they have built that trust, or they work on building that trust so that they can go back and find out who the shooter was. They're never going to expose that information to the police. And they go directly to that shooter and they have a conversation with that shooter. And they try to get that shooter who just shot somebody, who they just spoke to the victim, they try to get that person to stop the beef, to stop wanting to go after each other.
But isn't
I
that
don't
the
see
same
that
thing
same
isn't that
proactiveness
the
here.
same thing that We Are Us and Stop the Beef Hotline is doing?
Yeah, in a sense, yeah. Yeah. And even they have challenges. Even they have challenges. We spoke to the brothers that are involved with We Are Us. You know, violence interruption is not an easy task. You may think that it's easy to just walk up to somebody and have a conversation, but when someone is angry because you violated them, or they feel that you have violated
We
them in
need to
some
be
sort of
dealing with
way.
the after the fact trauma once it happened. We're not dealing with the victims on the level of, mental health services. Just because a person survived a failed shooting does not mean that everything is okay in the world. You're just
Of course.
perpetuating the what? Violence again. We're just only going to build more shooters. And I don't see me surviving a shooting and you coming to me talking about don't retaliate when you just tried to take my life.
Yeah,
And then
but that's what they
the
do
youth,
though. But
and he
that's what
said
they
something.
do.
He said, it takes the streets to stop the streets, or something to that effect.
Correct.
Again, how many times have I didn't say it? It takes a youth to lead a youth. It takes a senior to lead a senior. It takes
Right.
it takes it takes
Right.
a killer to stop a killer. But
Right.
they're
But
not
that's where Safe
incorporating this. I
Streets
don't
comes in
see
at.
no children. I don't
That's
see
where
no
Safe Streets
children.
come in at.
Excuse me. I don't see no children in safe streets. Our
Right.
murderers right now
Right.
are children.
But you don't need to have children. You just need to have folks that either were shooters or were in that lifestyle that can talk to that individual.
Jason,
That's
they
all you
don't
really
listen to
need.
their own parents. And this is where everything
But
is
they
going
might listen
horribly
to an
wrong at.
OG, and they have listened to an OG. Again, don't rule out the fact that out of these thousands of
We done took up too much
engagements.
conversation on this. We supposed to be talking about BG&E right now.
So again, don't rule out that with these thousands of mediations, that someone's life is not being transformed or saved in the process. And whether it's We Are
I
Us,
haven't seen
Safe
that.
Streets, you may not have seen it, but you don't know of every beef that's going on in the hood.
I know. Yes, I do. How
you don't know of every beef. There's
Jason,
literally
they
thousands,
don't even, because they're not out here and you know it. So please stop. Now
especially in a city like Baltimore. Especially in a city like Baltimore, there's thousands of beefs going on every day, easily.
Right.
Thousands,
so where
thousands.
are they? Where are they?
But again, this is not something that's going to be publicly known, because this is something.
Streets?
This is something that the streets are engaged in.
Jason,
Right.
I get probably more phone calls than
Right.
Safe Streets will ever get.
Right.
And I get more phone calls about the violence of our youth and how these people need to be moved, and I'm going to call them from now on, and I'm going to make them do their job. If your job is to, one, remove the person from the threat, then that's what I'm going to hold you accountable for.
That's not what they do.
Well, that's what
they're violence interrupters. The only ones that have been doing, the only ones that technically have been, and they're kind of overreaching as an organization, but I appreciate the brothers for doing this. We Are Us. they're the ones that have voluntarily, when circumstances are too extreme and they're unable to kind of, deal with and address the violence, they've had no other choice but collectively put their money together, and they have relocated folks to other cities. I'm not going to name the cities, but
Okay,
they
so
have
let's
they
see.
have personally they have personally moved people to other cities to
Wait a
get them
minute.
out of harm's way.
Bond Secure Community Work says to support returning citizens and violence reduction program as a part of Baltimore community violence intervention. Living classrooms to support projects serve employment training jobs reentry support for Baltimore's returning citizens as a part of Baltimore's community violence intervention ecosystem.
Right.
The GVRS services provision include coaching, emergency, relocation, and participate stipends for individuals 24 years of age and above over 2-year period. Funding will go towards the management of safe streets. Well, this is the Catholic charities, but in there, in the thing that I was reading earlier, it said something about nope. Well, all these actually supposed to coincide because all of them is community healing and
Right.
intersection change. Martha, the program is designed to stabilize through skills, economic empowerment, providing housing with supportive services such as addiction counseling, money management, training, case management, wellness classes, and community meals.
And Brother Randolph says that Safe Streets is based on it takes the streets to save the streets, which that's
Right,
always
that's what I
been
said.
right, but that's always been their principle in Chicago and in New York.
Well,
And
maybe they should
again,
have brought them down here to run it.
so from what I understand, the main person that set up Safe Streets was involved in the setting up of Safe
Baltimore have a
Streets
lot
here.
of poor programs, including We Are Us, and the sister that does the weekend.
The Weekend Stop Shooting, talking about Erica Bridgeford in the ceasefire movement. Well, actually, now it's called the Baltimore Peace Movement now. But that's what he's talking about.
Wow. Well, we also have a lady that claims that. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Um, um, they also have a lady that says that she goes out here and she actually talk to these young men and take the guns out of their hands. I don't see any of this stuff happening. We got the lady that say hugs, don't shoot. I don't see you giving no hug and people not killing each other. I don't see any of that.
But again, you're not there for every circumstance. So
Jason,
you're saying something that to me that sounds so far-fetched and so far-reaching. I don't see, but you're not there when these people are out there mediating. A prime example.
Yeah,
so
because they're not mediating.
Let me give you. You're saying that, but I don't.
Jason, where was the
I don't
mediation
agree
for
with
that
that.
12-year-old?
I
that was
don't agree
killed?
with that.
No, where was the mediation for that 12-year-old that was killed?
Right.
And they knew because the mother went to Safe Streets and they didn't help. Where was that mediation at? What happened to the one over there in East Baltimore where the 17-year-old was shot and killed in the car?
Right.
What about the ones that was just shot? All these ones that was just shot in East Baltimore.
Right. So you're looking through the stuff that has fallen what they call through the grates. So you're looking at stuff that you can obviously look at and say, oh, well, I see, that this person wasn't helped, or I see that person helped. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the program is not helping somebody. Prime example. And I had to dig in. I had to dig in a little deeper into this. The Community Mediation Center that's been on Greenmount almost 15, I think almost 20 years. I knew nothing about it. And when I asked everybody in reference to it, everybody kept saying, well, I've never heard of them. I've never heard of them. I've never heard of them. But they do have data that shows that they have gone out.
Data can be manipulated. So please stop.
Maybe data can. But at the end of the day, they have still been funded to perform a task. And I would expect that somewhere along the line.
So have Catholic charities that sit up there and do all this stuff with these shelters, and we don't see any of this stuff being productive.
We don't see it being productive. That's different. See, there's a difference. It doesn't necessarily mean that Catholic Charities is not running a crappy Code Blue shelter. They are operating. There, you can physically see it's operating. Is it necessarily effective? No, but it's the
And
same
safe
thing
streets
with.
is not either.
But you say that, but again, let's go back to the
Like I
Cherry
said,
Hill.
Jason, we're gonna
Right,
agree to disagree.
right. Let's go to the Cherry Hill example. They said that they mediated 1,000 some odd
Like I said,
particular
Jason, we're gonna agree to
incidences.
disagree because we're
Right,
not gonna agree on this topic.
right.
And you're just gonna keep pushing this narrative like it's out here working. Well, you
It's not
what?
about it. I didn't say it's working. You never heard me say that it's
Yes, you
working.
did.
No, you did not. No, you did not.
Yes,
We
you
can go
did.
back. We can go back on the recording of this. You have never heard me say that it's working. I didn't say that. I said you cannot rule out that their engagement is not engaging people. You cannot rule out the fact that they are behind the scenes somewhere having a conversation with someone that may have transformed or changed that individual's life or that particular beef that was
Jason, how
going
many
on.
times did we
You
get a call
cannot
the
say
saying?
that.
Yeah, but how many times did we get a call about the ineffectiveness of safe streets?
Right. And it's going to be hard for you to say, hey, can someone tell me who was helped by Safe Streets? Who's going to necessarily come up and
Jason,
have a
I'm talking about people that
conversation?
went through this that went to them and asked for help, and they were not helped.
Right. And again, depends on, I don't know what their protocols are, what their
Right now, they
circumstances
got
are.
protocols.
They may have. They may have. They may only deal with violence interruption. They may not necessarily deal with
Jason, we know
something.
how the dynamics of safe streets is set up in the
Right.
areas that is set up in the square footage of how they say safe streets is effective. So stop it. It's all
So again,
hogwash.
you're not hearing me. I'm not saying that they are effective. I'm saying that they are engaging. They are having conversations. They are trying to reduce violence. I'm not saying that it's working. I'm not saying
How
that
you
it's
going to
hundred
reduce it if
percent
you're a part of it?
right. Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately, we do.
And it's not even so much about mine. So again, I look at again in reference to this particular issue, I look at the fact that there are people that are out there that are doing things that you are not going to have these open conversations about what they do because you are dealing with killers, you are dealing with murderers, you are dealing with folks that their mindset is not right. People are not going to come have a conversation with you and say, yeah, you know what, Say Street stopped me from killing somebody the other day after
Well,
Johnny killed
let
after
me hear
Johnny
one
killed.
person say that, and then guess what? I'll start seeing how effective they are. But until then, like I
Right,
said, I get
right.
too many phone calls through people empowered by the struggle, who sit up there and say that they've reached out to Safe Streets, and then we're sitting up there supporting programs where people are still going, they're criminalizing with inside of Safe Streets. How make it make sense to me?
That's a whole different set of protocol. That's a whole different set of circumstances.
Right.
That is. That's no different than someone that you have elected into political office and then they go and they take gift cards. You expected them to go in there to do the
Dirty.
responsible thing. No, you expected them to go in there and do the responsible thing. Safe Streets is tasked with a certain duty and a certain responsibility to our community. A responsibility that the police can't do, the responsibility that most
Jason,
politicians can't do,
you
a
cannot
responsibility that most
replace
citizens can't do.
the police department with Safe Streets.
We didn't say that. I didn't say that again. But you
It
have to
shouldn't even
have
be inside of that office. They should have nothing to do with it.
you
It's
have
supposed
to
to be a
have
safe space.
right. You have to have multiple engagements.
So they
You
don't
have
have
to
a
have
duty
law
or an
enforcement.
obligation to know who a killer is and report them in.
I'm sorry.
So they don't have a duty or an obligation to
Not
know.
under not under this model and this
So
principle.
we're just gonna keep letting
That's the
children
whole
hold these.
principle behind Safe Streets is the fact that you can again have a conversation with someone or someone's family who has been victimized by violence and that you are able to go back to the person and try to get the beef squashed even after it has taken a life because what happens is retaliation, especially in Baltimore City, is very real. So the whole thing is about trying to interrupt that violence. It's trying
I
to
don't see no
interrupt
interruption
that
happening, Jason.
retaliation. That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to interrupt that retaliation.
It's no interruption.
And it means that you're going to have to talk to the killer. You're going to have to talk to the shooter. You're going to
So
have to
you're
talk to
not
the
talking them
victims.
into going to do the right thing of turning themselves in.
No, because that's not what you're trying to stop
They're
here. What
killers,
you're trying to,
Jason.
you're not listening. You're not trying to
I
hold
am
the
listening,
person
Jason.
accountable for what they did. That's not what Safe Street's job. Safe Street's
Well,
job
they need to
is not
reorganize and
law
come back.
enforcement. That's where the difference is. See, some people are looking at Safe Streets as supposed to be law enforcement, and then some
No.
people are looking at Safe Streets as
How are you going to
replacing
ask the
law
community?
enforcement.
No, how are you going to ask the community come up and turn somebody in, but you're not asking Safe Streets to do it?
They're not, because again, they're giving a different task and responsibility.
No, what
Their
they're
task
doing is
is to interrupt the
you go and
violence.
tackle the easy parts. You go after the
That's not
victim.
easy. That's not. You think
No,
it's
you
easy
go
to
and
try to
you
get a
go and say,
killer?
well, you're
You
going to
think
tell
that
a
it's easy to
victim.
try to put a
No, you're going to tell a victim
right,
not to retaliate, but you're not
right,
going to go to a shooter and
right.
tell them, well, you need to go turn yourself in because you just killed somebody.
That's not they don't do that. I told you we got to watch the violence paradox, because they actually show an example of it. And you would think that at that point that the mediator
I
from
can't
Park
wait till we
Heights,
get off here because you're going to get an earful when I'm
I don't
trying to
care about
tell
getting
you,
here. We can have an
baby.
earful in
I'm
here.
trying to tell
We can
you.
turn this on for another hour. Ask Donnie for another hour. We can have this earful
Well,
here.
if you
You
want to
know,
air it, I
you
will
know I
air it.
love I love a lively debate. You know
No,
that.
you don't.
Yes, I do.
No,
I
you
love a
don't.
lively
You
debate.
don't
Yes,
like
I
to
do.
debate with me. You're, oh, stop
Look,
it.
look. Matter of fact, I even see another show possibly coming. Kind of like what was it? Sigmund and Freud. What's his
The
name?
great debate.
Had no right, and had the move coming to the movies. Where you had the two different movie critics, and they went at each other from time to time. We can be community critics, and we can go at each other's throat, because again, at the end of the day, it's about having these conversations that allows us to be able to understand what is actually going on in our community. And I don't have a problem with them what they do, because I know at the end of the day, the typical person is not going to be able to go to a killer and get him to stop retaliating and shooting someone and killing someone. Only someone who is of the streets,
It's
or who is a
6:59.
similar killer, who has the history of
Look,
being a
Safe Streets
similar.
lover, can you give your last bill and let's go?
So I'm not in love with Safe Streets. I didn't
Yes,
say
you are.
that. Stop it. Stop it.
You
I'm
love
gonna
the
leave it
Safe
at that.
Streets.
I'm gonna leave it at that. I'm gonna pitch you when we get off. I'm gonna pitch you through the phone. I'm telling you. But family, we want to hear back from you again. And if y'all know some stories where Safe Streets has actually done something positive for the community, we'd
Yes,
love to
please
hear
let
it.
me know.
Yeah, post a comment, send us a message. Send it through instant messenger if you don't want to necessarily
Change my heart
post
and
it on
mind about
here.
Safe Streets.
And it's not about even changing our minds.
I
Again,
said mine. Leave me alone.
right. Well, my mind is already set. I'm not in favor of the
Yeah,
program
we know. Well, anyway,
as
we want to
as
thank
it
you for
currently
joining us.
stands.
We want to thank you for joining us for another Frontline News, where Jason needs to put on a Safe Streets shirt and be a
Oh,
lover of Safe
stop it.
Streets. We'll
Stop
see you
it.
next time, same
Stop
place,
it.
same time. Love you. Bye-bye.
Stop it.